Hi, John Gregor from Cold Snap Photography with some tips and tutorials. Today I'm going to be talking about filter systems. I'm going to give kind of a general overview about the use of filters, in particular for landscape photography. Many people ask me, why filter? You can achieve the same results in post-process. Why do you bother filtering the shot? And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, your camera, no matter what it is, has a set dynamic range. Whether it's 11 stops, 12 stops, or 14 stops, it has a set dynamic range. And anything beyond that either goes blasted out white or too dark. The only way that you can extend that range is either you can do it in post-process to a certain degree, and you have some latitude there, or you can do multiple shots that you fuse together. To me, that gives sort of a process look to the image, and I don't care as much for that. The other way that you can do it is using filters. By filtering the sky or the foreground, you can adjust that dynamic range. The bottom line is this. The main reason why I like to filter is because I like to fiddle with the camera. It's not for everybody, but it's the way that I like to work. It allows me to work with the camera more, to think about the shot that I'm taking more, and it also allows me to go through a creative process while I'm working with the filters that I find changes and adapts how I see the scene and the way that I want to depict it. That's the primary reason why I like to use filters. Let's take a look at a few different types of filters. First of all, the filters that most people are familiar with are the round thread-on filters. You just thread them directly on to the lens. And those come in a variety of different types. There's polarizers, there's neutral densities, there's variable neutral densities, and then there are split or graduated round filters. I don't care much, and I don't use many round filters. They're slow to apply. If you want to add extras, you have to stack them, and a lot of times that causes vignettes or other issues on the edges. And they aren't quick to change in changing conditions. The variable neutral densities are basically two polarizers. A polarizer has some pitfalls. It can cause some wonky effects in the image if you're not careful. You combine two polarizers together in one filter, now you really have the chance for some wonky effects. So I'm not a big fan of the variable neutral densities. Instead, I prefer to use the square or rectangle type filters, and that is a filter system. And that filter system is one of the things that we're going to look at in depth. I'm not here to recommend a specific brand of filters, although I will be telling you what I like about certain brands and why I use that brand. But there's many brands out there that are very high quality. Let's look at what a filter system looks like and how it works. With the square or rectangular filters, you need to use a filter holder. What holds the filters? And that has to affix to the lens. So there are two basic parts of a filter holder. There is the ring that you thread onto the lens, and then there is the holder itself that goes onto the ring that you put on there. Now, what happens if you're working with a lens that's a little different in size, maybe smaller? How do you attach this holder onto a lens that's much smaller? You simply use what's called a step-up ring. And in this case, I have a step-up ring for 72 to 82, which is the base size of the ring that I put on the other lens. So I just thread that step-up ring on, and then I take this ring and thread it on here and put the holder on. It doesn't affect the operation of the filter holder at all, and it works perfectly fine doing it that way. Let's talk about how to use the filter holder once we have it attached. The particular brand of filter holder that I'm using here is a Nisi V7 filter holder. And I like that filter holder for one very specific reason. It allows me to apply a polarizing filter really quickly. The polarizing filter is ultra thin, and it has these white marks right here, and they line up with the white marks that are in the holder right there. It's a bayonet mount. All I do is drop it in, it's in there. It's really quick to put in or to take out. It is controlled by a series of rings that are on this holder on the top and on the bottom, so I can adjust the filter, the polarizer filter, even though I might have filters in the front. I don't have to reach around to try to adjust it. I simply turn this little wheel back here and adjust it for polarization. The different types of filters that we have that we will use with the filter holder are neutral density filters, and they're square. There are also rectangular filters, which are graduated neutral density filters. They're typically dark on the top and clear on the bottom. And they come in a variety of types. They come in basically 4 different types of graduated neutral density filters. They're used for applying to adjust the brightness of the sky or the upper part, or sometimes you can turn them around and use them on the lower part. The 4 types of filters that we use are called a soft graduated neutral density. That's what this is. And it starts dark up here, clear here, and it slowly graduates from dark to light. The second type that you will come across is called a hard graduated neutral density. That's what this one is. This has a very definite line here. It's very slightly feathered, not much at all. And that works if you have a really precise horizon line, like a lake or something like that, or a very flat prairie. You might use this. The third type that I don't have here is called a medium soft graduated filter. It's just a little more abrupt than what the soft is. And then the fourth type is called a reverse neutral density filter. And that's a little bit different in that they put a darker area sort of in the middle of it. So in many cases, there'll be a 3-2, which is 3 stops of darkness in the middle, 2 stops up above, and clear on the bottom. And that's used for when the sun is on the horizon and you want to darken down where the brightest area is, which is right by the sun. I don't have one here because I don't use it very often. How to apply these filters properly. First, if we take a square neutral density, that's what I put in first, closest to the lens. I put it in the very first slot. This particular filter holder will accommodate up to 3 drop-in filters, in addition to the polarizer that I have on here. So I can put up to 4 filters on there, not cause any vignetting with the lens. So the reason I put the solid neutral density filter closest to the lens is because there's a very subtle seal here that keeps a light, stray light from going in and messing up the use of the neutral density filter. The next one I apply is the graduated neutral density, and I would put that in the next slot out. A lot of times I will use more than one graduated neutral density. I might add, if I want, a hard to further define the edge, or I might use a second soft to really deepen or darken down the sky. A few tips on this. If you're using the hard, usually all I use is about 1 or 1.5 stops, because a very small adjustment goes a big way if you're using a hard graduated neutral density. You get that change immediately. 2, if I'm using 2 filters, I don't keep them perfectly level with each other. I usually filter or feather one back just a little bit like this. Not a whole lot, just maybe 1/8 of an inch or so, and that's to add a little bit more of a gradual transition from the gradation that I've got going on there. The other thing that I see that beginning filter users do is they slam these things into the filter holder too far. They're looking at the back of the camera and they're struggling to see any difference. It's a subtle difference, and a lot of times you don't see it right away. So they put it in, and they put it in too far. And what that does is it darkens down the bottom part of the photograph that you don't want darkened down. So if you look at these filters and you just assess, where is the transition? It's right about here. And if I'm taking a landscape photograph and I've got the sky at the 2/3 point, I don't want to put that in any more than that. If I have the sky, the horizon line lower, I can put it in a little bit lower, but I don't want to slam this thing way down in here so I'm getting the graduation all the way into the bottom of the photograph. I want to keep it towards the top. I carry around 4 and 5 stop graduated neutral density filters. That's primarily what I use for the graduated, either a 4 or a 5. And a lot of times I'll use them in conjunction with each other, where I've added a 4 and a 5. That doesn't mean I'm doing 9 stops of neutral density in the sky. Because of the way I'm applying it, and I'm keeping it feathered back to the upper part, I'm only applying maybe about 2 stops or 3 stops with each one. So my combined total might be anywhere from 3 to 5 stops, considerably less. But it works out a whole lot better. When I frame a scene, typically I will place the camera, frame up the photograph that I want to take, and then figure out what filters that I want to apply. So in this case, I want a neutral density filter so that I can slow down the water, and that's the first thing that I put on the camera. And then I adjust my exposure accordingly, increasing it so that I get the longer exposure to smooth out the water in this case. I also want to bring the sky down a little bit on this one, so I'm going to apply a graduated neutral density filter to the sky area, just in that upper corner a little bit. I'm going to bring that in just a little bit to darken down that sky. And that looks pretty good. As far as brands of filters go, you can use a variety of different filters. The ones that I like best are the glass filters, as opposed to the resin or plastic filters. This is a 100 millimeter filter system. I can use any brand of 100 millimeter filter that I want in this holder. It doesn't have to be a Nisi filter. So I use View, which is now Benro, or the Benro filters. I also use the Nisi filters. Both of those are made with optically pure glass. They're probably my preference. The one filter that you have to make sure is brand related is the polarizer. The polarizer is unique to the Nisi holder because of that bayonet mount system. I like to use a filter kit, a pouch to carry all my filters. I use one with a neck strap to go around, so I just throw it over my shoulder, and it holds all the filters that I might want to use, my graduated neutral densities or neutral densities, as well as the polarizing filter that I would like to use. It's a real handy way to carry them, and I just sling it over my shoulder, so it is always with me. Well, those are some tips on how to use a filter system with neutral density and graduated neutral density filters for your camera system for landscape photography. Hope it helps.